There has been a coup d'etat in Myanmar, and the military has taken charge of the country through the coup that they have carried out, establishing a 1-year state of emergency in the country. Now, there were recently elections in the country, and the military, of course, the military-backed party did not win. Now, what happened after this coup d'etat, which took place yesterday, is they immediately started to detain government officials, state councillor Aung San Suu Kyi, for instance, and other civilian government leaders have been detained. And as this coup was underway, cell phone and internet communications were shut down for obvious reasons. It makes it incredibly difficult for people living in the country to communicate as this was happening. Now, in November, the elections ended with Suu Kyi's party capturing 396 out of the 476 seats in the combined lower and upper houses of parliament. The State Union Election Commission has confirmed that result. The military is arguing that there were some sort of inconsistencies and voter fraud taking place, very Trump-esque argument of people voting twice in the election. There has been absolutely no evidence of that. But I do want to go to a video explaining a little more of the excuses that people are hearing from the military and just how unpopular, for obvious reasons, this coup has been. People have already taken to the streets to protest. Let's take a look at some more of this story and what the now detained Suu Kyi is urging the people of Myanmar to do.
Among the many arrested, civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi and other high-ranking members of a ruling party, National League for Democracy. In a statement, she denounced the coup as an attempt to put the country back under a dictatorship, adding, "I urge people not to accept this, to respond, and wholeheartedly to protest against the coup by the military." The dramatic escalation marks the culmination of a bitter dispute over November's general election. An election which saw Suu Kyi's party coast to victory in a landslide, but which the military insists was fraught with irregularities. Claims that the country's election commission has dismissed as baseless. News of the coup has drawn strong international condemnations.
It's nothing short of outrageous, deeply disturbing. This is unacceptable. The international community rejects what has happened, that leaders of the world are united in their revulsion of this illegal act.
So part of the problem, other than the military carrying out the coup, was the way that the relatively new constitution in Myanmar was drafted, which gave an unfortunate amount of power to the military. So their constitution is from 2008, and the announcement on the military-owned Mayawati TV cited Article 417 of the country's constitution, which allows the military to take over in times of emergency. So what did they cite as the emergency here? Well, the announcer said that the coronavirus crisis and the government's failure to postpone the November elections were reasons for the emergency. The military, by the way, drafted the Constitution in 2008, and it retains power under the charter at the expense of democratic civilian rule. Human Rights Watch has described the clause as a coup mechanism in waiting. And as we just saw yesterday, that coup mechanism was triggered and used by the military, and they carried out this coup. The Constitution, by the way, also reserves key cabinet ministries and 25% of the seats in parliament for the military, a portion that limits the power of a civilian government and rules out amending the charter without military support. And one other point I wanted to just quickly mention is that the general, the now military general, has to retire soon. They have mandatory retirement once they hit a certain age. And so this is also seen as a coup meant to find ways for him to maintain his power. So, I mean, I believe that based on how this coup was carried out, and the civilians in Myanmar are not in favor of this coup. We'll go to a video on that in just a minute, but Cenk, I wanted to give you an opportunity to jump in.
Yeah, so look, sometimes when these tumultuous situations happen in other countries, it's pretty hard to discern what's going on, especially in the beginning. I don't think this is one of those situations. So do we know the internal politics of the Myanmar military and which general is vying against another and the power plays? No, of course not, right? But do we know the general big picture? Yes, it's this one seems very clear. So first of all, the military ruled Myanmar for decades. Second of all, yes, it's in the Constitution that they could take over the government anytime. You know why? Because they wrote it. So, I mean, to say, oh, it's in the Constitution means nothing. The military wrote the Constitution, and of course they put in a clause saying at any time we could just trash the democratic government and take its place. And what kind of a democracy says 25% of parliament should be run by the military? That's not a thing. And do you know who the leader beat in this case? It was a politician backed by the military. So the military lost the election, and once they lost the election, they're like, yeah, there's an emergency. The emergency is that we lost the election, so we're just gonna take it. They lost the election. Her party won 396 out of 476 seats. I mean, that's not like Biden's win. A landslide on top of landslide. That is an utter destruction. That's the people of Myanmar saying, we do not want the military to rule, and we're absolutely positive. So look, I think what the military did in Myanmar was they thought, we'll put democracy up there as a fig leaf, but we'll still run the place. And we'll put something in the Constitution just again as a fig leaf. So when we do a coup, we'll say that, oh, the coup was constitutional. So like in 2017, everybody was saying, why won't the elected leadership of Myanmar do something about the ethnic cleansing of Rohingya Muslims? Well, it's because it appears, that one's a little bit vaguer, but it certainly appears that the military definitely, well, we know the military wanted to do it. And it appears they have almost all the power in that country. So the minute that they lose a little bit of the power or a little bit of the fig leaf, they're like, oh, we were just kidding. This was never a democracy. We're in charge, and now we're dropping all pretenses. And if you oppose us, we'll probably kill you.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not trying to erase any of Suu Kyi's responsibility in not, speaking out unequivocally against what was happening to the Rohingya Muslims. It was ethnic cleansing. There's no question about it, but it was carried out by the military, and so maybe she thought that she can, avoid provoking them in some way. But there is no negotiating with terrorists. There is no negotiating with people who would carry out that kind of ethnic cleansing. And when push comes to shove, as we've seen with this coup d'etat, as soon as they see that democracy is actually taking place and people have spoken and elected someone who isn't backed by the military, they're just going to jump in and use the Constitution that they rigged in their favor to carry out this coup with ridiculous excuses. But I think the most important people to pay attention to, guys, is not what military leaders or what political leaders in the country have to say. It's what the people and the civilians on the ground have to say. And already there are some pretty brave people who are protesting against this coup. So let's just go to this last clip to give them a voice.
On the streets of Myanmar, the coup is seen as a sad setback for many, little more than a decade after it celebrated its transition to democracy. I feel the army assaulted the people when it staged this coup on the civilian government, a government elected by our people. Our country's just a bird learning to fly. Now, the army broke our wings. As Myanmar is catapulted towards an uncertain future, many are rushing to stock up on essentials, bracing for an end to democracy as they know it.
So we'll fill you guys in on this story as we learn more details. But communications are still, pretty sketchy, meaning cell phone and internet connection in Myanmar. And I think it's a pretty troubling sign when the military blocks communication, so civilians can't effectively communicate with one another and with people outside of the country. But the situation is not looking good, and we'll see how this develops. But it's just not a good situation on the ground.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.